Kelsey Jensen here. Today we are going to make some Mexican chicken soup and some chicken taquitos and taquitos and some blueberry turnovers. So let's start by getting our onions caramelizing up, because what we're going to do for this is we're going to cook up our vegetables, throw in our shredded chicken, season it up, and then I'll pull some of that out to fill up my taquitos on there. So it's kind of a way to use just one pot to make this whole deliciousness. And like I said, I am kind of cooked out of my refrigerator and freezer, trying to get everything cleared out for the new year so I can start fresh on the new year. So I'm going to get creative with some of our ingredients that I have. Let's see how long I can stretch it. Okay. Flip these eyes over. I'm going to dice these up nice and small, get them caramelizing. Here. And we're doing a Mexican themed soup is because the other day I opened up a can, which I thought was just diced tomatoes, and they were the like spicy diced tomatoes. So I was like, oh, they didn't go with what we were making the other day. So I had it. I'm like, I got to use this up before it goes bad. So the soup was born. Okay, so we've got our onions diced up. I'm going to get a little drizzle of olive oil in here. I'm going to turn this on and start heating up. And we'll let these start to saute, get a good caramelization on it. And then we'll also be throwing in celery, carrots, some peppers, and that's kind of like the base of our soup, like the veggie base. We'll also have canned diced tomatoes and shredded chicken. But let's get that going. Let's give these guys a little toss. Coat them up. And then we're going to work on our base for our popovers. So, like I said, cooking through all of our kind of food here. And I had 3 partial containers of blueberries that are ready to be cooked up and used. So we're going to put our blueberries in here. Turnovers. I don't know why I said popovers. Turnovers. We're having turnovers. Although popovers might make an appearance this week because I love popovers. And I have lots of eggs because I just opened up a 5 dozen pack of eggs. So we've got lots of eggs in our house. So we're going to start with, I'm going to say this is probably close to a pound of blueberries, maybe a little shy of it because it was kind of, parsed, together for it. And we're going to turn our back burner on, let it start to heat. And then I'm going to grate some lemon zest in here. We'll squeeze a little bit of lemon juice, add a little vanilla and some sugar, and we'll let it kind of cook up to make our base for it. So let's get our lemon zesting. And this will add a nice little tanginess and a little extra pop of flavor to the blueberries. And the nice thing is with a pop or a turnover, now I've got my mind on it, you don't need a whole lot of fruit to fill up the inside of it, because if you put too much, then they get runny. So having little bits of stuff is great. Okay. And we don't need a whole lemon. Just a good squeeze of half a lemon should be enough to add that nice little sour kick to it. Okay. And let me wash my hands because I've been lemonified. And then we're going to add a small pat of butter in here. So when we add our cornstarch as our little thickener in a little bit, the butter always takes away that kind of chalky flavor. So just about a tablespoon. And then we're going to add a splash of vanilla. And some sugar. And then we'll let those start to kind of cook. The natural juices in the blueberries, once it gets warm, will start to pop out. And that will give us a really great base for our turnovers. And we're going to do about, let's say 3/4 of a cup of sugar, maybe a little bit less. We don't need a whole lot. It will do a little less. because blueberries are pretty sweet, and even though it's a good amount of blueberries, they do kind of shrink down, so you don't want it too sweet. Give these a nice little turn, coat them up, and then we'll let them kind of start to cook. There we go. On there. So while that's cooking and that base is getting going, let's come over here and check on our onions. I'm going to turn it down to a 5 now. Now that they've got a good starting to caramelize on them. We'll give this a good little stir.
How were the meatballs and naan?
Oh, excellent. They were delicious. I think my husband said they were the best. It was the best naan and lamb dish that I had made this year. And they were really, really flavorful. I used this Greek Freak, which has a little kick in it, and it was just really, really lovely. Added like a little spiciness to it, which was nice. And then they were just very tender. And the naan, oh, I just love homemade naan. It's just so delicious. Okay, we're going to get some carrots peeled and diced up to go into our soup. And then I have a couple sweet peppers and some celery. And those are going to be our like aromatic vegetables that are going to go in here. Yeah, these are very skinny carrots today. Yeah. And slide this guy. And just little pops of them just to help flavor up that broth, add a little pop of color to it. But again, carrots, I don't want them to be a main component in there. They're just going to be more of like a little subtle tasty bits. So I'm going to kind of cut down, not all the way because their tips are pretty small, but kind of quarter it. So we'll again have nice little diced bits. And then we'll throw these in there to saute up. And we'll get our celery in there and our peppers. And then we'll get some shredded chicken. And we'll season that up. And then before we add our liquid base in, I'm going to pull out some of that chicken to make our taquitos or flautas, or, you know, just little like meat and cheese rolled up in a tortilla and fried. So delicious. But they're perfect for dipping in soup. So let's give this a good toss. We'll kind of coat these guys up. Yeah. Perfect. And then I have some celery as well on here. We're going to slice down the middle. Make, again, nice smaller pieces so you don't have big chunks of celery in there, but really will add a nice flavor to the base of our soup, which is going to be kind of a cream, or not a cream, but a tomato and chicken base to it. So we're going to use some tomato paste plus a can of diced, tomatoes with green chilies in there. So that will kind of like make our broth base just really flavorful. And the celery will just add some aromatic notes to it. Okay. We'll get these in here and let them saute up for just a second. And sauteing them before we do our broth base is just going to allow their flavors to come out a little bit nicer.
Did your friend like the Christmas dinner you made?
She did. She said it was wonderful. I was kind of a little hesitant how everything would reheat, and it reheated up nicely. She sent pictures of it, and it had a perfect medium rare into it as well. So it was excellent, and they were really appreciative of it, and it was delicious. So I'm always glad. It always makes me like more nervous when I'm cooking for other people, because you want everything to turn out perfect for them, you know? And it's like, I know it should, but you just always worry a little bit. Here is our lovely, beautiful blueberries here. You can see they're oozing out some of their little blueberry deliciousness. Looks like I've got one lemon seed. And grab that. And we'll have this be our filling in our turnovers. And I'm not doing a super tart blueberry. Another little lemon seed, those little hideout for me. But more of like a sweet, like a blueberry pie. But we have that lemon juice and we have the sweet, but the vanilla kind of brings it all together and I think makes it really more of like a wintry version of it than, when you go a little bit more tart during the summer. Okay, I'm going to turn this down nice and low and just let it simmer for a little bit. And then before we're about to put it in our turnovers, we will put a little bit of cornstarch in there to thicken it up so that it won't run out everywhere. Which is important because a turnover, you don't want your base to be too liquidy or you'll have a soggy turnover. Okay, I got the last of my sweet peppers. We're going to dice these up and put them in there. Now, if you want a little bit of heat, you could definitely throw in like a jalapeno or, poblano or any type of spicier pepper.
But I have a question. Do turnovers use the same technique as pie crust?
No. So with a turnover, we're actually going to be using frozen puff pastry. Now you can always make your own puff pastry. But what you're going to do is you essentially are going to have a square. You'll put kind of in the base, you'll fold over and you crimp the edge and then you brush it with some egg wash. So it's not like a hand pie. If you use a pie crust, then instead of a turnover, you have more like a hand pie. It's a different type of crust for it. So a puff pastry is going to be a lighter, flakier crust, where pie crust is typically denser in it. There we go. And I do make hand pies. I made hand pies earlier in the fall when we had so many apples for it, and they were delicious. But turnovers are just a little lighter, fluffier, more like a croissant than a pie. And it's one of those things where you can make your own puff pastry, but the time you save by just buying some frozen is a lot of time. Yes, I always say the homemade version is slightly better, but is it worth the extra couple hours? And I always say no. There's just some things that, where you can truly get it store-bought, and it's pretty much as good as if you made it yourself.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? So tonight, as I told you, I'm going through and cooking through. I had some pork chops. So I think we're going to have pork chops tonight for dinner. Not sure how I'm going to cook them, but that is going to be our protein for tonight on there. I do have mushrooms, so I might do pork chops and a mushroom gravy. Maybe I'll do like a southern fried pork chop with a mushroom gravy and mashed potatoes, but it is yet to be determined. Okay, let's take a look over here. Beautiful. Perfect. So I have it nice and low. Let me wash my hands so I don't have any peppery feeling on it. And I'm going to turn this down. And we're going to start getting our turnovers out so we can start baking them. And then we'll make a little sweet glaze to go over it. So anytime you use puff pastry, you just want to set your puff pastry out anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour before you're going to use it so that it de-thaws. You don't want to leave it out too long because then it becomes too soft and harder to work with and doesn't give you the same result. So you want it to be cold but not frozen. And you get 2 sheets with it. Now, when I am using puff pastry, you don't want to just use your sheets like this. You need to roll it out a little bit thinner because otherwise it's way too thick. So I'm just going to roll it out and I'm going to try my best to keep it in the rectangle. And this is going to allow you to have a thinner base and just a little bit lighter so it's not as dense and it just bakes up a little bit nicer. Because they're just too thick if you leave them unrolled. And then we've got our blueberry base there for our little compote. We'll add some cornstarch in to thicken it up, make a little slurry there. That way we'll have all that blueberry juice flavor, but not the liquidiness of it. Okay, looking good. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this into 4 pieces. Make them as even as possible. Now I say that and then they're always wonky sizes. And you can use a knife. I'm just using a pastry cutter because, again, when you cut it thin, it should come apart fairly easy. And if your dough is cold and not like room temperature, it won't be too flimsy. Okay, we've got first round. We'll put them on here and then we can get ready. I'll roll out the next one. That way, when I fill them up with the blueberry base on it, I can get them all prepped up at the same time and going. Now, these, when we fill them up, we'll fold them over, so we'll have plenty of space on here. And you can do 2 trays. I'm using my big 1.5 sheets because that will allow me to have all 8 of those turnovers on there. Get this rolled out. Make sure you take your parchment paper out. And we're going to roll it again. Don't roll it too thin because then it will snag and tear. So it's finding that kind of happy medium between. I feel like I roll it maybe like 1.5 times the size of it when it came out. Looks like, there we go. Trying to make it as even as possible. But again, sometimes you get a little wonky when you're rolling. We're going to flip it up, flip it over because that side is a little bit drier, has more flour on it. And then we can kind of cut this.
And where did you buy the dough?
So this I just got at Publix, my local grocery store. You can get it at Target, Kroger, whatever grocery store. You just buy it in the freezer section. So it's typically where you can buy like the frozen berries and Cool Whip. That's where it's located. But this is the good old Pepperidge Farm. I find I like their version. I like the best out of them. I've had a couple different ones, but they're my favorite tasting because they just taste like a puff pastry. No addedness to it. It's nice and flaky. Okay. We'll get these guys on here. I'm just going to kind of fold them and start folding them over that way. When I'll be ready to form them and shape them. And I will say, try your best to make them as a square versus a rectangle because they fold a little bit nicer when you can actually match them up. Now, you can also fold them like hot dog style as well, but they won't have the classic pretty turnover shape.
Can you also use phyllo dough?
Phyllo dough is a very different dough. It's a very flaky, multi-layered dough. So that's better for if you're going to make like a baklava or, it's a different. It would not give you the same result or taste. So it's not something that's kind of comparable. Now, if you want to make homemade baklava, phyllo dough is what you want to use because they're paper thin sheets and there's lots of layers of it. And you kind of brush butter between each layer as you're building with it. And it gives you a very kind of a crunchier base to it. Okay, so these are sort of put how we're going to have them. Let's finish off the base of our blueberries so that we'll be ready to kind of turn them in.
Have you ever made baklava?
I have made baklava. A couple years ago, we were doing universal yum boxes, which is we actually just started redoing them because they were so much fun. And I think we had a box. It was, I'm not sure what country exactly. I think it was Turkey. But it was over that country, and their suggested dessert was to make baklava. And so I made it for the very first time, and I used the phyllo dough, and it was delicious. And it was actually a lot easier than I originally thought it was going to be. And maybe that's because I purchased the phyllo dough instead of making it. Let's give this, we're going to mix this in. And essentially, once we have the blueberries form a nice kind of thick gel, then we will be ready. Just sprinkle a little bit of that cornstarch on at a time and then mix it in. Just trying to kind of coat up my top of my spatula here so it all gets, there we go. And then let it heat up before you add some more so that you don't add too much in here.
Do you ever make sourdough bread?
I make sourdough bread a lot. I actually have some sourdough bread in my sourdough bag. I made a loaf for Christmas Eve and a loaf for our Christmas for our smorgasbord, as well as a challah bread as well on there. And I just fed up my starter this morning so I can prep up some more loaves. Yeah. So I enjoy making things. Oh, and I made sourdough stollen for Christmas as well. Okay, we've got our blueberry compote working there. I might add another round of our cornstarch in. This is going to be our filling for our turnovers. I'm going to add enough until I've got a good thick gel for it.
Can you go over what's in?
Yes. So it is essentially about a pound of fresh blueberries, about 2/3 of a cup of sugar, juice from half a lemon, lemon zest, and about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And we should have this nice kind of sweet base, not too tart, but a nice sweetness to it. Let's get this. I'm trying to get it to the right thickness because you don't want it runny when we put it in here, or you'll have a soggy turnover. And this blueberries are more liquidy than an apple or a pear. So you're going to need a little bit more cornstarch to get you there. But we're almost there, I can tell, just by the viscosity of it. Let's let that heat up for just a second. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit. And while that's heating up, let's give our little things a nice stir over here. And here we've got our onion, celery, carrots, and peppers sauteing up for the base of our soup. We'll add in some tomato paste in just a second, and then our shredded chicken. But I want to get this going. There. Should get me there in just a second. Nice little taste. Delicious. Once it comes to a boil, I think it will thicken up all the way. I don't want to add any more cornstarch until I get there on there. But let's bring it a little bit higher. Okay, while we're waiting for that to come to a nice boil, let's get our tomato paste in here. We're going to season it up with our spices, then we'll throw in our chicken on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to reserve part of our chicken to go in our little like taquitos that will saute or fry up in our pan. But we want to season them first. And it's just nice to season them this part and then pull out some of that seasoned shredded chicken, and the rest will be in our soup. We're going to add in a good heaping spoonful of tomato paste. This is going to thicken up our broth base, give it a nice tomato base without it being too like runny. Give it a richness to it. And looks like our blueberries are just about there. Looking good. Perfect. I'm going to add just a smidge more. And just sprinkle it over the top. And then as it goes in there, it will incorporate and thicken up. Okay. I think we're at a fairly decent base for this. Yep, you can see how it's starting to scoop up now. So I'm going to turn it off. We'll slide this over here. We'll let it cool for just a second, or at least get the bubbles off, and then we can stuff our turnovers here, and then we'll brush them with an egg wash and pop them in the oven at 400 to bake for about 15 minutes. Okay, let's get some spices in here so that when we throw in our chicken, it will have some nice flavor. We're going to start with a little bit of oregano, about a teaspoon of dried oregano. A couple good shakes. And then we're going to do about a teaspoon of ancho chili powder. Actually, I don't need to take the lid off. This will give it a nice kind of earthy. It's not a very spicy chili powder, so won't make it too hot. We're going to do a little bit of paprika, which will add a nice kind of pop of color to it as well, but nice kind of savory flavor. And then for our big spice, I got our Mexican Fiesta seasoning, which is just a really good blend that whenever I'm go to Whole Foods, I always grab it because I like it, because it gives you just a lot of great flavors. We're going to add in about 2 teaspoons. And it's not too spicy either, and doesn't have any salt in it, so it's not like a taco seasoning or anything like that. Okay. We're going to mix this up. Let it kind of really cook into that tomato base for a second. And then we will add in our chicken and let that all kind of coat up in a little bit of water to start with, so that the chicken can get a little bit of dampness to it. But it looks like beautiful, perfect. This is right where we want it. Okay, I'm going to actually slide this over here. That way I have this to work with. Okay, I'm going to use a smaller spoon so that I can scoop it a little bit more carefully in here. And then I'm going to grab my fork. That way we can kind of crimp our dough. Now with this, don't overfill your turnovers or you'll have them like busting out. Pop that one in there. So kind of a good little base right here in the middle. We're going to go up and then take like a fork. So like you're kind of doing like a pie crust on there, but just kind of crimp your edges together. Make sure you get them as sealed as well as you can. That's just going to prevent any ooze out. But luckily, if you've made your base thick enough, you won't get that oozing either. There we go. Let's see if I can. There we go. Now I've got it lined up. Now that's what I say. You want to make sure you've got it into see how we've got a nice blueberry gel base here. That's going to hold it together so it doesn't run out and make your base too soggy. And the same thing if you're doing like apples or pears or any type of fruit filling. You don't want to leave it just the straight up liquid, or you're going to have ooze everywhere on there. This one's got a little blue coloring to it. Perfect. And get them in here. So I'm doing about, I want to say it's maybe like around 1/4 cup of filling for each one. And then you just pinch it together. That's going to seal it. And then when we're done, we're going to brush it with an egg wash, which will give it this nice golden brown color as it cooks, which will, that pretty color to it. Let's slide this guy in there. Now you see how I'm only putting it right here. When it bakes, it will spread out and fill out the whole void. But if you overfill it, that's when you're going to get it to kind of leak out. And if it leaks out, then what will be left is like a dry inside instead of like a juicy jelly inside. There we go. Halfway done. And I suggest making them on your baking sheet instead of trying to transfer them. If you try to transfer them after you do it, the filling is hot, which is going to cause your pastry to warm up, which will make it more difficult to move around and more likely for you to like tear it or spill it. So try to do it on your parchment paper on your baking sheet.
Have you ever made these with strawberries before?
I have not made them with strawberries because I just find that strawberries, I'm not in love with strawberries like in a gel. I like my strawberries fresh, like with a strawberry shortcake. That's kind of my preferred method for using a strawberry. I've done like a strawberry in a crisp before. It's not my favorite, but I think these actually would probably be pretty good with a strawberry rhubarb, where you could have a little bit of that tartness from the rhubarb. And a slightly more texture, because strawberries get pretty mushy and they hold a lot of liquid. So you almost need something else to add a little base. And I think rhubarb would make it wonderful. I think actually that would be really delicious, a strawberry rhubarb turnover. But I just find that strawberries on their own, they don't have quite the right texture. And they're very, very sweet when you make like a gel like this. Here. But I mean, I think like it could definitely work out well. But I think it'd be a preference. Here we go. And now we get to our last one. And pretty much perfect amount of blueberries for this. Perfect. Slide this over here. Say a great way to use up extra blueberries, especially when it's like I buy a 10 and I swear the kids eat like half of it and then it goes missing in the back of my fridge. And then I'm like, oh, we're out of blueberries. We need another one. And then the same thing happens. There we go. We've got that. And now what we're going to do is let me grab a little knife here and just make a little cut in each one so that it doesn't pop up too much. Otherwise, the air inside your turnover can build up and cause it to pop open or crack open. So you need a little vent for it. And then we'll brush it with a little bit of an egg wash. Let's get a smaller bowl. And this is going to give you that shiny brown coating on it. If you don't do the egg wash on it, what happens is you'll have more of like a paler color to it. Just doesn't look as nice. Yeah. Give this a good whip up. And essentially it's like 1 egg with about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of water is enough to give you a good wash over it. You don't want to do a straight up egg because then you can kind of get chunks on there and it kind of curdles and it's very, very shiny. Good mixture is perfect. So we'll brush these and make sure you get every little nook and cranny because if you miss a spot, you'll definitely tell when it bakes. Now, it doesn't really add any extra flavor, but it does give you the presentation. And then we'll make a little glaze to drizzle over these as well. Get in there, little ridges. And you want to do an egg wash, not like a milk. You know, you can brush milk or cream over to brown it up. The egg is going to give you the shiny, where versus a milk will give you just a brown color to it. And you want that shiny because puff pastry is, you know, you typically get that shiny look with it, like with a brioche. Here. Kind of dabble in there. And then we'll have these bake up. And the beautiful part about this is when you pre-cook the filling, that's going to ensure that you have this nice jelly base, not liquidy or running. With blueberries, you don't have to worry so much about them cooking up, but with like apples or pears, whatnot, or firmer fruit, you know, if you just try to put apples in here and bake them at 400 for 15 minutes, your apples will still be kind of rock hard. So the pre-cooking allows you to get that nice jelly consistency so you don't have too much of an ooze out and they'll bake up nicer. Okay, we're going to pop these in the oven. They're going to bake for 15 minutes at 400 degrees. They should be a nice kind of rich brown color. That egg wash is going to give them a nice rich brown, which makes them lovely. Make sure your oven is preheated when you pop it in here. We'll slide it in here. I'll set my timer for 15 minutes. And perfect. And one thing, again, roll them out thinner. If you try to bake them their regular thickness, then they're going to need to bake longer because it takes longer for that puff pastry to crisp up. Let me wash my hands. And let's get this show on the road. Okay, we've got kind of like our, like almost like a Mexican mirepoix going here with our seasonings and spices. I'm going to add just a splash of water in here just to make it a little bit more liquidy, so that when we put our chicken in here, our spices will really kind of coat it up. And then we're going to add just a little bit of garlic salt as well so that the chicken will have a little bit more flavor on it. Let me turn the other way. We'll do about a teaspoon and a half of garlic salt. Beautiful. So now you've got almost like the consistency almost of like a spaghetti sauce. But we're going to get some shredded chicken in here. On here, just good old shredded chicken from Costco. You can get like almost a 3-pound pack there for like $17. So it's a pretty good price. We don't need all of it, so I'm just going to actually cut it down the middle. That way I'll have another chunk of chicken for another day. You can either pop it in the fridge and use it in a couple of days or pop it in the freezer. Now with our chicken here, I'm going to break it apart because sometimes you get really big chunks like this, and we don't want them that big in our soup or in our taquitos. So you can chop it up, but I find chopping it is going to lend you to more of a shredded chicken, like fall apart in the soup. So just go in with your hands, pull it apart. It's already pre-cooked. There. I think we should be good. And we can toss all of this in here. Give my hands a quick rinse. Here. And we'll coat this up, coat our chicken up with this. And this is going to give our chicken a lot of great flavor, which we can use on our taquitos. I'm going to put just a splash more water in here just to make this a little bit more moist. You don't need a lot. And then once we pull out some of this chicken, we will pour the rest in.
Can you go over the seasonings?
So yes, so right, we started off with was sauteed onions, carrots, celery, peppers. Then we added in tomato paste, and then oregano, paprika, ancho chili powder, garlic salt, and then some Mexican fiesta seasoning, which is just a salt-free like Mexican blend, which is lovely. Let's pull out some of this chicken for our taquitos, because we don't need all of this in our soup, but that way you'll have that great flavor on it, which will be delicious. And then we'll stuff them inside our tortillas and fry them up with some cheese. I think that should be just about good, because we can always throw, if we end up having too much, we can always throw it back into our soup. Okay. Before we pour in the rest of our broth, I've got a can of diced tomatoes. These are the ones with the peppers in it, you know, like Rotel essentially. Again, I opened these up the other day thinking it was just diced tomatoes. I wasn't reading the can, and I was like, wait a second, these are spicy. I can't use that. We're going to mix this in here. And then we are going to add in the remainder of our water, and then we'll do a scoop of chicken bouillon. Let's do a little at a time. Mix it up, kind of deglaze the bottom of our pot with any spices that are kind of stuck on there. There we go. Add a little bit more. And we'll let that kind of stew up and simmer. We'll add in some beans on there as well. Here we go. Let's get our chicken bouillon. Let's get a spoon. We'll get these kind of going. We're going to do a nice heaping spoonful, enough to flavor up. This with that little bit of garlic salt that we added in should be enough to season up our soup that we don't need to add any salt. Just making sure I can get it all off my spoon. And there we go. And then I'll just set this in case we want to add a little bit more. I'm going to bring my temperature up. We're going to let it simmer. While we're going to do that, let's get our taquitos just about going here. We'll flip this over. We have a little bit cleaner of a side. I'm going to grate up some cheese that we can put in our base. This is some good old-time cheddar. And then I have some pepper jack. And we're going to use a mixture of it. We're also going to be putting some cheese to kind of garnish within our soup as well. So we're going to start by grating it. That way the filling of our taquitos are nice and cheesy and chicken, but they'll blend together. We'll add the pepper jack to add, again, a little bit of heat to it as well, but a nice mixture so it's not overpowering. It should be good for right now. And then I've got a good old pepper jack. And I find that the mixture of these really give you like the kind of perfect little blend. My kids and I, we all love cheddar, but this adds just a little bit more heat to it, but just enough to where it's not too spicy. There we go. We're almost to the very end. There we go. Close enough. So we've got our cheeses here. Move them to the side so we can start assembling. Let's get a little bit of oil in our pan so that we can kind of fry these up. You don't need a whole lot of oil, but you want enough to give you that fried tortilla texture. So I'd like to put a nice kind of thin layer on the bottom of my pan, but it doesn't have to be super high where you're like deep frying each one. You're just coating each side. We're going to get this starting to heat up. I'm going to start it high, and then once it gets hot, we'll turn it down. And then we're going to use the remainder of our tortillas. I'm always like, yay, another thing out of my house that we've used up. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 6 taquitos. Kind of perfect. And these have no jack bites in them, so that's always good. He did get a hold of our little croissant bread the other day, and there was like 5 little bites out of the package. And I was like, oh, Jackie. Okay, so we've got our cheese. We're going to put our chicken in here. There we go. And then the second little layer of cheese on the top. That way you should roll up. Try not to overfill them too much or they won't like hold together well. But you'll get it like this. And then I keep them upside down and I start the frying process upside down. Once they've fried through once on that bottom, they'll hold together. But if you ever have problems with it, you can take a little toothpick and put it in there to help keep it together. But I find if you just hold them like that, they'll stick together well. So again, start with a little base layer of cheesy deliciousness. We'll add in our seasoned shredded meat. And you'll know when you're rolling them up if you've overfilled them. Don't be afraid to unroll them and just pull out a little bit. Because if they're overfilled, they will not hold together. And then just kind of tuck them in there. And then rest them upside down like that on that crease. And then when we put them in, they'll be perfect. Our oil should be hot here in just a second, which means we can start frying them up.
Judy sent you a tiara.
Oh, thank you. I am a princess. A bow. I was talking to my husband the other day about, growing up, my family, my mom's from Sweden. And my grandmother, she used to always tell me these crazy people that I would look like. And some of them were like, so missed the mark, completely missed the mark. I was told I looked like Jodie Foster and Jennifer Lopez, which I am like, no, I don't look like either of them. But then she was like, you look like the Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden. And this was the one I finally agreed on. I'm like, you know what? We have the same round face and cheekbones. I can see that. But every other person you've told me I look like, don't. She told me Emma Stone. And I'm like, I don't know where you think I look like these people. I'll take it as a compliment, but I don't look like them at all. You know, that's how grandmothers are. Sometimes they're a little crazy. We've got these rolled up.
We get this one a lot. Anna from Frozen.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. I'm a little quirky like her too, so. I did dress up as her for Halloween a couple years ago. I made my costume and everything. I actually made an awesome costume for myself and for my husband. He was Kristoff. And this is when I just had 2 kids. So it was Lena and Torn. And Lena, of course, was Elsa. I'm going to turn this down now lower. And Torn was Olaf. And they were like the best costumes ever.
Yeah, talk about the cape.
Oh, yes. So the thing that made these costumes amazing was I borrowed this cape, and I kid you not, it is like a Victorian era cape / cloak from my mom, who had happened to buy it like a year or 2 earlier in Ireland. And she went there and she goes, 30 years ago, I went to Ireland and I just fell in love with this cape and cloak. And guess what? I went back to the store and it was still there. And all I could think about is after 30 years, no one bought this cape cloak. And I mean, I don't know why you would, because this is like, you're going to wear it to like a Charles Dickens festival, but it was perfect for my costume. It was like in the same kind of coloring and everything. It was hilarious, and she loves it, and she'll wear it every like Christmas. And I'm like sitting here and I'm like, we're going to go caroling in this cape. But the best part about it is I was toasty and warm. It was like 20 degrees this Halloween, and that never happens in Tennessee. Everybody else was freezing, and I'm like in my Charles Dickens cape cloak, matched my outfit perfectly, wonderful. Everyone were like, you guys are out trick-or-treating? It's so cold. And I'm like, you gotta go trick-or-treating on Halloween. But it was I'm gonna have to think. I think we actually posted when we did on Halloween, we did a family reel. You can look in there, but I made that costume. Sewed everything. I was really proud of my Kristoff costume because I got like faux fur and everything, and like I made this whole amazing outfit for it. It was awesome. Okay, we're gonna let those fry up. I'll make these final 3. Then we should be about ready to add our beans into our soup. Our turnovers, I think, will be pretty done pretty soon. And we'll just finish off everything because we're kind of going towards the end. Yeah. Although I will say my mom went back to Ireland like another 2 or 3 years later, and the store had closed down or probably finally shut down, or, 3 years, because it was like a family business. And she's like, oh, there was another thing I really wanted there as well. And I was like, well, you got your cape. It was one of those purchases where you're just like, you really bought this? She bought it. Here we go. We'll put our cheese on there, roll it up, and fold it in. And once these are kind of get a nice little browning on the side, we'll flip them over. But when you fry them, that will hold them together so they won't pop open. So you really don't need anything to hold them together because they actually work really well. Okay, put our base layer of cheese, our last bit of our taquito chicken, seasoned up with all the great flavors that are in our soup. I have a little bit of extra chicken, so I'm just going to throw it back into our soup, so no waste, which is nice. Now, you could also throw in some corn in the soup if you wanted to, add another little thing, but I was all out of corn. But I'm going to make it through. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to use up as much as I can before going to the grocery store. I'll flip this over. Beautiful. Look at that nice crispy edge on there. Perfect. And you see, they just like our little envelopes holding together nicely. Okay, let's get our beans. We're going to rinse them. Don't just dump your can of beans in there. But before we do that, when we turn this down, let's grab our turnovers out of the oven. Perfect. Gorgeous. Got this nice golden kissed brown to them, that nice kind of shininess from that egg wash. Beautiful. And then we're going to make a nice little glaze to drizzle over them. I think about, when you got your toaster pasties growing up, you got to drizzle them with that glaze, but you want them to cool off just a few minutes, because they'll be really hot if you try to do it right now. But these are our blueberry turnovers. They've got a nice kind of blueberry filling flavored with lemon and vanilla, so nice kind of slightly sweet, and gelled up with a little bit of cornstarch to make sure that they have this nice kind of thickness to them, kind of like those old school blueberry hand pies, but in a nice puff pastry filling. I'm gonna rinse my beans here real quick so that we can add them to our soup. I'm gonna do a Great Northern bean, like a white bean, because I really love white beans over black beans. They're a little less, I feel like, intrusive in your soup. And they pick up the flavors really nicely. So we have those in there. We're gonna let that stew here. Let me get a plate. And just like with bacon, you're gonna wanna put a paper towel down to absorb up any extra oil.
When you get a second, can you go over the blueberry filling?
Yes. So I used about a pound of blueberries. And then we added in about 2/3 cup of sugar, zest from a lemon, juice from half a lemon, about a half a teaspoon of vanilla, and a tablespoon of butter. And then cornstarch. We probably had about 3 tablespoons of cornstarch in there before we got this nice little blueberry gel base to it, our nice blueberry compote. And then they're inside our lovely puff pastry. Okay, those are just about. Let me taste my soup now that it's in here, simmering with all this thing, if I need to add anything else. Perfect. Has the right amount of saltiness. Has that nice flavor from the Mexican fiesta and the ancho chili powder. Beautiful blend of everything. We'll grate some more cheese here in just a second, but let's start. We can work on our glaze here. And then these should be about ready to come out here in just a second. Just about. I'm waiting for this nice golden crisp up. Don't heat it too high, or it will get burnt faster, and you want it nice and low. I'm gonna grab a little bit of cream or milk. Well, you can do a lighter one. We're gonna do a little bit of milk in here for our glaze. That way it's a little bit thinner and not too thick. And then we're gonna add a splash of vanilla. And if you wanted to do a lemon glaze, you could use lemon juice and for this as well, because it kind of pairs well. But I want a more like a sweet kind of hand pie blueberry versus like a tart blueberry flavor. Okay, we're gonna take it out. Look at our beautiful gold. Make sure you put it the oil side down on your paper towel. That's going to allow it to be nice and crispy. Again, beautiful. Perfect. Put those on here. These are our chicken taquitos with both cheddar and pepper jack cheese. We have it filled with our shredded chicken that we seasoned up with the base of our soup. So these will be perfect for dipping into the soup. Turn it down to about a 3. We're going to cook them in our oil until they're nice and crispy. The second round cooks faster than the first one. So just be prepared, because your oil is a little bit hotter there. So be prepared that they're going to cook faster. So if you need to lower your temperature down on there, because you don't want to burn them, you want them to have this nice golden brown crispiness to it. So we've got our vanilla and our milk in here. We're going to start with about a half a cup of powdered sugar, and we're going to whisk it together. We want kind of the consistency of glue so that we can drizzle it over. If you used cream instead of milk, you're going to need even less powdered sugar to kind of get you to hold that base together. Add another little half of a cup, because a little bit of liquid goes a long way with powdered sugar. But I want this to be a light, almost like a glaze over the top of our puff pastries, our turnovers. Just a little bit more. We're almost there. Probably could have cut my milk down in half, but 'tis the season. There we go. That seems about the right consistency. Cream will give you a richer, more opaque glaze that will be more akin to a frosting. Milk gives you a thinner one, which will be more like a a donut glaze. There we go. That should be good. Let's check these real quick. Perfect.
Have you ever thought about going on a show like MasterChef?
Yeah, I thought about it. I don't know if I could leave my family for that long. And I don't know if I could be through the pressure. I feel like everybody who goes on there is so amazing that they're like, oh, I was just a home cook. And I'm like, no, you aren't. You worked in some restaurant, Michelin star. You're amazing. They're all like amazing beyond abilities. I feel like I'm a good home cook, but I don't know if I would say I'm TV worthy, like Master Chef, on there. Also, I don't really care about my presentation. And on those shows, presentation is like half of it. It's got to look super bougie. And to me, I'm like, it's just got to taste good. So maybe if I up my A game on that. There we go. Nice, good drizzle over. You want to do it while it's somewhat hot so it kind of really coats. Now, if you want them really sweet, you can dip them in there, but I just like a little bit of glaze over the top. Let it run down, but not so much that it's going to be overpowerful sweetness. Tried to say that, didn't come out right. Okay, let's get our soup finished up here. We've got our last taquitos going. Let's get a little ladle in here. Beautiful. We're just about ready. We're going to grate some cheese in it, and then, of course, we'll save some cheese for garnishing. But I've kind of used up most of my cheese that I have. But let's see if we can scoop this in there. Put it in there as well. This is going to give you, it's going to mellow out some of that flavors, those spicier flavors on there. Now, I'm using cheddar, but you could use, like a Kobe or queso fresco or quesadilla cheese if you can get it. I'm going to do about a cup in here. I don't want crazy amounts, but enough to give you a nice, slightly thicker base to it. It'll pair well. With that in there, we're going to let it melt up. And then we're going to add in some green onions, a little freshness at the very beginning. Let me get and we're going to just snip them in here. You want to add these right towards the end so they stay nice and fresh on here. And then we'll get our taquitos out here in just a second. I have them cooking really low so they won't burn easily. Again, when you're starting out and you're frying, go low and slow. You'll still get that crispy edge, but you'll have more time to process it and make sure you don't burn it.
I have a question. Is this soup similar to a chicken enchilada soup?
Yeah, it's honestly pretty much like the same flavors as a chicken enchilada soup. Same little ballpark for it. Let's see, a little bit. We're almost there. A little bit longer. I want them to have a nice kind of golden one, which is perfect. I also have for our soup that we'll garnish with, I've got some fresh lime and avocado. So we'll get those propped up, and then hopefully all of that should be done just about there. But it's a nice little garnish to go on it. Or you could also use your avocado to make a guacamole to dip your taquitos in. Both are good options. If your avocado is nice and ripe, it should peel off from your, away from your fruit fairly easy. There we go. Took a little bit with that. We're going to dice this up. That way we can put some nice big avocado chunks in our soup when we garnish it, because nothing's better than a good chunk of fresh avocado. And then I've got some lime, which we will slice over and squeeze onto our soup as we go. And then one last bit of garnish of cheese.
Judy sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Here we go. And we're just about ready here. Let me wash my hands real quick. These should be about ready to come off. Perfect. Again, put them your oil side down so that they get extra crispy and not greasy, but just a beautiful golden brown. I turn that off. We've got our soup ready. So let's get ready to plate up here. And we grab.
What kind of beans did you use?
I used white or Great Northern beans, but a white bean like a cannellini bean, because I find that they are a little less prominent in your soup than a black bean. A black bean I feel like has a lot of flavor and just stronger, where these are more mild, not as dense. And I really like their flavoring better. But again, you could really sub out any bean in here if you wanted. Let's get a plate. Get my little cauldron. Bring my taquitos. And we are ready to serve up. For lunch today, we have our Mexican chicken soup full of Great Northern beans, celery, carrots, onions, green onions, a nice tomato kind of based broth with paprika, ancho chili powder, Mexican fiesta seasoning. We're going to top this with a little bit of our shredded cheddar cheese, a couple chunks of our avocado, and then a good squeeze of fresh lime juice over the top. That citrus just adds a great bit of flavor. And then we will serve it up with one of our taquitos that is made from the shredded chicken that we had in the soup that we took out, plus cheddar cheese and pepper jack cheese, and then we fried it up in oil. And then for dessert, we have our delicious blueberry turnovers. Nice, you can see the blueberry popping out over there, with our vanilla glaze on top for that little bit of sweetness. You'll have the nice crunch from the puff pastry, and then that just beautiful blueberry jelliness inside for just a delicious treat. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our Mexican chicken soup with our taquitos and blueberry turnovers, and you guys can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of my different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my Dutch ovens, my Hexclad pans, my really big baking sheets, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.